Hi there, this is Kim, and I'm making this vlog since I was challenged in the Who Am I in My Worst Case Scenario challenge. So, the purpose for me is to place myself in my worst case scenario, meaning like my worst fear that sometimes comes up in my mind, to really investigate it and to I suppose find out who I really am in my worst moments. And within that, and from there already, maybe potentially see solutions to be able to effectively direct this fear. So, my worst case scenario would be getting cancer. That is like a big fear that sometimes comes up in my mind still, and that used to be something where if I read an article about cancer or I would find some kind of symptom, I would have some kind of ailment, and I could, in a way, link it to things that I've read or heard about people who have cancer who also experience those things. I would just like go into this panic and have like an intense experience of fear, and then try to suppress or avoid even thinking about it because I would be so afraid of getting cancer because of certain things that I've heard about it. So my worst case scenario would be specifically um, that I go to the doctor, like that, okay, that I at some point collapse, like fall unconscious or something, and that I would be rushed to the hospital, or that I would wake up in the hospital and that the doctor would come to me and he'd sit me down and he'd go like, "Ma'am, I'm sorry to tell you this, but you have cancer." And even like whether it's stage one, two, or three, it doesn't even matter to me. Like in my mind, it's all the same. Cancer is cancer. It's just the, the idea of having cancer to me would be horrifying. And I suppose what I'm most afraid of in that scenario when I'm sitting at the doctor is the actual fear that I would experience or the horror that I would experience in that moment rushing through me, where I can just kind of see myself sitting in that chair listening to the doctor. And as soon as even when he's like about to tell me, I can just see myself already going into that kind of nervousness and anxiety and horror because I'm already kind of fearing it that he would drop the C word. And like I can just when he says it to me, like, "Ma'am, I'm sorry to tell you this, but you have cancer," then I can just see this experience of total terror rushing through me where I feel almost paralyzed. And it's like a very intense energy that really makes me feel like I'm paralyzed, like my body in a way shuts down for a moment because that energy of fear in that moment is so intense. And yeah, it's an energy that I have experienced before in my life, certain moments in my life, where it is like this extensive amount of fear just rushing through my body where I feel completely disempowered. I feel completely weakened by that fear itself. Like my physical body in that moment becomes absolutely weak. And well, from there, the fear and the worst case scenario that would play out would be facing the question of what do I do? Where do I go from here? Because I also have certain ideas and fears and perceptions and beliefs related to, for example, doing chemo. because there's, the medical community who's all like, yes, chemo is the only answer and the only solution, but if you do chemotherapy, there's only so much percentage of chance that you have to be able to get through it and actually make it out alive. And the process of doing chemo is also, I've seen many pictures and read stories where you've got a person looking very, very sickly with like a bald head sitting in a wheelchair and they're just constantly having to vomit. And then, where, especially also when they extract bone marrow, which is, I think, also a procedure associated with cancer treatment. And I've seen footage of that procedure being extremely painful, where the person is just in tears because it's such an undescribable pain. That is also part of the worst case scenario. And yeah, the having to make a decision on my own life, having to make a decision and not make the wrong decision. Like, am I gonna go with chemotherapy and take my chances on that route, or am I going to take the alternative route and try to like create some changes in the food that I eat, or yeah, I suppose the food that I eat, and go, do some alternative therapy that might have worked for other people. Because the fact is that I wouldn't really know. Like, if I look at myself right now, I don't have like a clear understanding of what would actually be best for me. And I'm assuming that in that situation, I also would feel kind of confused and uncertain about what would actually be best for my body. If I do chemotherapy, is it actually gonna assist me? Is it actually gonna help me get through this? If I do the alternative therapies, is it actually gonna help me? I don't know. And it's that experience that I'm also afraid of just feeling like my entire life is not in my control and feeling disempowered. And I mean, if I have a look at all of this, mostly what I'm afraid of is the experience of disempowerment. Like, it's the experiences where I feel weak inside of myself because of fear, because I'm so afraid of making the wrong decision, or I'm so afraid of the word cancer itself. I'm so afraid of the being diagnosed with it. I'm so afraid of even thinking about what chemotherapy might do to me, that I feel completely disempowered and that I feel completely just weakened inside of myself and almost paralyzed by fear. It's actually that experience that I fear the most, being in those situations where I just feel that huge, intense experience of fear rushing through my body. And that's an interesting fear, because that means that I am actually afraid of myself, that I'm afraid of a part of myself, an experience that exists in my own mind, fear, because I'm afraid of fear itself. I'm afraid of what fear might do to me, which is in itself quite bizarre, because fear in itself can't actually do anything to me. Like, even those experiences of feeling disempowered, like, so what? It's just an experience, like, whatever. Like, why do I even feel, why do I even fear feeling disempowered? Doesn't make any sense, because it's just a feeling. So, so um, who would I really be in those worst case scenarios? I mean, like, now, looking at this point of fear that I have, fear of cancer, it's like this big thing in my mind. That's like a one dimensional, superficial way of looking at it. But if I were to really place myself in that actual scenario, if I were to, in a way, imagine myself waking up in the hospital or sitting at the doctor's office or going into the room to get chemotherapy or radiation therapy or standing in front of that choice and looking at the choice of what I'm going to do, which therapy I'm going to go with, what decision I'm going to make, that's a whole different thing. I mean, because right now the whole thing is like shrouded in fear, as if the entire process and the entire thing is just going to be one big, huge experience of nothing but fear and nothing but that experience that I'm afraid of, which is fear itself. That I'm just going to feel like that the whole time and I'm not going to be able to do anything about it. And that's just going to be what it is, which makes me feel afraid of it because of that whole daunting kind of monster that I've made it out to be in my mind. But obviously, if I were to be in those actual situations, then I would most likely be a lot more self directive and self empowered. I mean, yeah, sure, those experiences of fear and disempowerment would probably come up, but it would probably like just come up for a moment and I would immediately realize that, okay, this is just fear, this is not of practice. So let me just look at things practically because if you're in that situation, it's like fear isn't really going to help you very much. So, like, the only way that you can really support yourself is by taking the situation hands on and just doing what needs to be done, regardless of where it all ends up, regardless of, I mean, you might make the wrong decision and you might die, but I mean, that's just kind of how it is. There's like, if you're in that situation, there's not much that you can do about it. And going into fear the whole time is not going to in any way assist and support you. So I think that if I were to be in that situation, I would develop a lot more courage. I would develop a lot more like, not just courage, but courage in the sense of being able to let go of fear of death, being able to be unconditional in every moment and just let go and relax and let go of all my fears. Like, I see now that I still have a lot of fears within myself that I tend to allow to direct my life. But if I were in that situation where I actually have cancer, where my worst fear is coming true, then I would probably more take on an attitude of, you know what, fuck it, excuse the language, but like, yeah, like to hell with all this fear. Like, what have I been doing with my life? I'm here, I'm alive, I'm just gonna live in every moment. I would most likely be a lot more motivated to really live and to really make the most of myself and my life. So I mean, if anything, I'm looking at it, being in that situation might be exactly what I need, unfortunately, um, to say that. But like, yeah, that is how I should be already. That is how I should live already, as if I'm already in that situation where my worst fear is coming true, so to speak. So thanks a lot, Kim Kline, for tagging me in this challenge. A lot of interesting points have actually opened up as I was walking through it right now. And I can't wait to tag someone else and give them the opportunity to realize the same and open up dimensions inside of themselves that they might not have looked at and considered yet. All right. Thanks.